The 2023 Oregon legislative session ends today with a flurry of activity. Legislators are voting on bills back to back, clearing the backlog created during the Republican-led walkout. Our KOIN 6 reporter Jamie Seymour had a chance to sit down with Governor Tina Kotek this week to talk about the session and what still needs to be done.
I think it's good that the legislature got back to work and finished, or on the path to finishing what they need to do. I think we need to assess where things ended up. We will have a session next February. At this point, I don't see a need for a special session. We could always do more, and we might have disagreements, but I think they're going to end with good budgets and good investments on things that matter. And my job as governor is to implement them and make sure they work.
The 43-day walkout ended after Democrats did make concessions on controversial abortion, transgender care, and gun bills.
Well, I think it's good that they reached compromises. The work of Oregonians needed to get done. Budgets need to get passed. We're on track to pass the budgets. Significant bills, in addition to the bills that had some changes, were really important for the state. I want to commend them for figuring it out. And I hope we can build on the relationships that have developed here at the end of session so that when legislators are back in February, that we have a good, successful session for Oregon. We still have a housing and homelessness crisis, a mental health and addiction crisis. We want to make sure our early literacy rolls out well. We don't have time for people to not be getting along, so hopefully we can figure it out. There are a lot of good wins for the session, and probably in another day or two I'll have that list of things that went well and where we need to keep working. And I would say summer school funding is one of those things. Making sure our early literacy investments are actually going to get done is an important piece for me. And we're still assessing all the housing and homelessness investments that have come through the session. I think we have a good story to tell. Now we have to make sure those dollars are actually making change, and that's falls to me after session to make sure we're using those dollars well. So much has been moving at the end of session. Once the deal was reached, everything went into overdrive, and I have not had a chance to look at the bills. Some of them have been changing. So now we're in the 30-day period for me to sign bills. There might be some things I don't agree with, but right now I don't know what those are.
Communities across the state are making adjustments to deal with the fallout from Measure 110. That's the voter-approved measure that decriminalized small amounts of hard drugs. That includes the city of Portland, where Mayor Wheeler's proposed ban on outdoor drug use will be considered at city council as Portland deals with a fentanyl crisis with people using openly on the streets.
Well, there is a bill moving in the session. I think it's on its way to passage, which does do some adjustments on Measure 110 to clarify some roles, to make sure that there's appropriate accountability. My focus is making sure that those folks who are getting those dollars are indeed expanding capacity for communities who need more recovery services. I do think we have to have a conversation of what can we do to make sure that if people are using drugs outside on the streets, that there's a better place for them to be. I think Mayor Wheeler in particular is saying, we didn't legalize outdoor drug use. We said we wouldn't arrest you if you have a little bit of drugs. We have to have some balance here, and I think he's probably approaching it in a way that will be helpful.
We also asked the governor about where the state stands on handling the homeless crisis and the concerns of businesses and neighborhoods in Oregon, especially in Multnomah County.
I do support time, place, and manner ordinances. I think it's appropriate for cities to say where people can be for health and safety reasons and other reasons. I also think it's important that once you set those up, that you're providing the services that people will need if they can't be camping outside. I think the one challenge in Portland is going to be, do we have enough day shelter and day placements for people to go when they can't be in a tent on a street?
This week, we learned about a data breach at the DMV that compromised the personal information of thousands of Oregonians. We asked the governor about that.
What I've learned by talking to the experts who do this kind of cybersecurity issues, you want to announce a breach like that when you're prepared to say what the resources are. And I think we were only a day away from making that announcement. So there was some folks who got to the information before we went public, but it was practically another day before we were going to announce it. What I understand is when you let people know that information's been compromised, that also indicates to the people who took the information that now they know what they have. So you want to be very careful about how you make the announcement to both protect the people who whose information could be compromised, but also then be ready to answer questions. And we're literally 24 hours before we were ready to do that. Well, as soon as we had heard from the vendor that there might be an issue, we set up protection so no further breaches could happen. We are looking at all the protocols that were related to that data to make sure we don't have any issues going forward. And in the meantime, making sure that Oregonians who are impacted know who to call, know what they should be doing, because a lot of us are impacted, right? If you have a driver's license or an ID card in the state of Oregon, you are impacted.
The legislature also dealt with the public defender crisis, where people accused of crimes are going without counsel because there are not enough public defenders to go around. Hundreds of cases are being dismissed in the state because of it.
The public defense crisis is a priority for me in my office. I am comfortable where the bill landed. We had a lot of good back and forth about what would happen when public defense is moved over to the executive branch. And it's not just enough to talk about the money. I have questions for the legislature. You have put more resources into public defense. What exactly is going to be different? So we will be talking to legislative leaders and the judicial branch about what can we do to lessen the backlog for folks who don't have public defenders right now. It is a public safety issue. So I'm glad they passed the bill. That is a longer term fix. I'm glad we have resources. Now we need to figure out how this is going to get better quickly. And I'm not sure how we answer that question yet.
And we also asked the governor when we'll get a permanent Secretary of State after the resignation of Shemia Fagan after the Lamoda cannabis scandal. Cheryl Myers is the interim Secretary of State right now. Governor Kotek told us she still hasn't made a decision and she's, quote, still having conversations.